Clara Bennett's hands were frozen to the child's coat when Jonas Mercer found her. 3 days buried under a wrecked stagecoach in Montana snow. 3 days shielding a stranger's boy with her own body. 3 days watching her fingers turn black while she whispered prayers she no longer believed in. The child lived without a scratch. Clara lost 3 fingers and everything she thought she knew about survival. This is the story of a disgraced nurse, a silent boy, and the cowboy who refused to let either of them disappear. Stay with me until the end. Comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The stagecoach had been missing for 3 days when Jonas Mercer finally found it. He'd told himself he wasn't looking. Told himself it wasn't his business that the woman on that coach was a stranger, that her letters meant nothing beyond ink and paper and desperate hope. But here he was, knee-deep in Montana snow, staring at the wreckage scattered across Devil's Crossing like God had reached down and broken the world in half. Lord Almighty, he breathed. The coach lay on its side, one wheel still spinning slowly in the wind. Luggage had exploded across the snowbank dresses books, a shattered mirror catching the gray winter light. 2 bodies lay near the horses, already stiff with cold. The driver, a man in a city suit. Jonas moved closer, his heart hammering against his ribs. That's when he heard it. Faint. Barely there. A child crying. He ran. His boots punched through the frozen crust, each step a small explosion of white. The crying was coming from beneath the overturned coach, from the small space where the door had been ripped away. Jonas dropped to his knees and looked inside. A woman was curled around a boy, maybe 7 or 8 years old. Her body formed a protective shell, her arms wrapped so tight around the child that Jonas couldn't tell where she ended and the boy began. The boy was crying. He was alive. The woman wasn't moving. "Ma'am." Jonas reached in his hand, touching her shoulder. Cold. So cold. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" Nothing. "Ma'am, I need you to wake up now." The boy looked at him with wild eyes. "She won't let go. I tried to make her let go, but she won't." Jonas saw it then. The woman's hands wrapped in the boy's coat, clutching the fabric so hard her fingers had frozen in place. The skin was black. Dead black. "How long you been here, son?" "I don't know." The boy's voice cracked. "Forever. She kept talking to me, telling me stories, but then she stopped. She stopped yesterday, I think, or the day before." 3 days. This woman had kept a child alive for 3 days in killing cold, and she'd done it by giving him everything. Her warmth, her strength, her hands. Jonas pulled off his gloves and pressed his fingers to her throat. A pulse. Weak. Thready. But there. "She's alive." He said more to himself than the boy. "By God, she's still alive." Dog. Getting them out took the better part of an hour. The woman's hands had to be pried loose from the boy's coat, and Jonas worked as gentle as he could, knowing the damage was already done. 3 fingers on her left hand were gone, not cut off, but dead frozen, past any hope of saving. 2 more on her right looked questionable. She didn't wake through any of it. The boy, his name was Thomas. He finally said Thomas Wheeler from St. Louis, clung to Jonas's leg while he worked. "Is she my mama?" Thomas asked. "What?" "She said I should pretend she was my mama if anyone asked. She said it would be safer." Jonas paused, looking at the woman's face for the first time. Dark hair matted with ice, a strong jaw, cheekbones sharp enough to cut. She was younger than he'd expected from her letters. Mid-20s maybe. And beautiful, though he felt guilty noticing it while she lay dying in his arms. "She ain't your mama." "No, sir. My mama and papa were on the coach too. They're—" Thomas's voice broke. "They're the ones by the horses." Jonas closed his eyes. The bodies he'd passed. The man in the city suit. A woman he hadn't looked at closely, hadn't wanted to see. This boy had lost everything. "What's her name?" Jonas asked. "The woman who saved you." "Miss Clara Bennett. She was nice to me on the coach when nobody else was." She gave me her blanket when I was cold even before the crash. Clara Bennett. The name from the letters. The mail-order bride who was supposed to arrive 3 days ago. The woman Jonas had been telling himself he wasn't looking for. All right, Thomas. Jonas lifted Clara into his arms, cradling her against his chest. She weighed nothing, or maybe fear made him stronger than he was. We're going to get you both somewhere warm. Can you walk? Yes, sir. Then stay close to me. Don't look back at the horses. You understand? Yes, sir. They walked. Bitter Creek wasn't much of a town. A main street of packed dirt, a general store, a saloon, a church, and maybe 30 buildings total, most of them leaning like they were tired of standing. But it had a doctor. That's what mattered. Jonas carried Clara through the street. Thomas stumbling alongside him. People stopped to stare. Whispers followed them like shadows. That's Mercer. What's he carrying? Lord, is that a body? Who's the boy? Jonas ignored all of it. He pushed through the door of Dr. Harlan Whitmore's office and laid Clara on the examination table. Doc, he called. Doc, I need you now. Harlan Whitmore emerged from the back room wiping his hands on a cloth. He was a tall man, silver-haired, with the kind of face that looked trustworthy until you spent enough time looking at it. Jonas Mercer. The doctor approached slowly, his eyes moving over Clara's unconscious form. What have you brought me? Found the stage from Devil's Crossing. This woman and the boy are the only survivors. She's got frostbite bad on her hands, maybe worse elsewhere. I need you to... Wait. Whitmore held up a hand. He was staring at Clara's face now, his expression shifting to something Jonas couldn't read. This woman. What's her name? Clara Bennett. She was on her way here to Clara Bennett. Whitmore said the name like it tasted bad. The nurse. You know her. I know of her. The doctor stepped back from the table, folding his arms across his chest. She's the one from Boston. The scandal. Jonas felt cold spread through his chest that had nothing to do with the weather. What scandal? She was dismissed from Massachusetts General Hospital, quite publicly from what I understand. Whitmore's lip curled. She treated a Negro patient when she was explicitly told not to, defied her superiors, caused an uproar that made the papers. So she helped someone who needed help. That's a scandal. It's a violation of professional conduct and common decency. Whitmore's voice was clipped. She was engaged to a doctor at that hospital, a good man from a good family. He broke it off after the incident. Her own family disowned her. He shook his head. This woman has destroyed everything she's ever touched. Jonas stared at him. She's dying, Doc. Then perhaps that's God's judgment. The words hung in the air. Thomas made a small sound of distress and pressed closer to Jonas's leg. You're refusing to treat her. I'm refusing to have that woman in my practice. Whitmore picked up the cloth he'd been holding and resumed wiping his hands as if the conversation were already over. She made her choices. Let her live with the consequences. She'll die without help. Then she'll die. Whitmore met Jonas's eyes, and there was nothing there. No compassion, no doubt, nothing human at all. Take her somewhere else, Mercer. She's not my concern. Jonas had never hit a man without provocation. He'd been raised better than that. But standing in that office, looking at Harlan Whitmore's smug, satisfied face, he came closer than he ever had before. Instead, he gathered Clara back into his arms. I won't forget this, he said quietly. I don't expect you to. Jonas turned and walked out, Thomas trailing behind him. Coed. The ride back to the ranch took 2 hours. Jonas had rigged a kind of sled behind his horse, padding it with blankets and furs. Clara lay motionless in it, and every few minutes Jonas would stop and check that she was still breathing. She always was. Barely. Thomas rode in front of Jonas wrapped in the rancher's coat. The boy hadn't spoken since they left town, and Jonas didn't push. Some things needed silence. The Mercer Ranch sat in a valley where Bitter Creek wound through like a silver ribbon. The house was solid, 2 stories built from timber Jonas had hauled himself, and smoke rose from the chimney. Someone was home. "Pa." The voice came from the porch. A boy, 8 years old, with dark hair and eyes that were too old for his face. Samuel. Jonas's son. Sam ran toward them, then stopped when he saw the sled. His mouth opened, but no words came out. They hadn't heard Sam speak in 4 years. Not since his mother died. "Sam." Jonas dismounted, keeping his voice calm. "I need you to run inside and tell Mrs. Holloway to prepare the spare bedroom. Clean sheets, hot water, fast as you can." Sam stared at Clara's unconscious form, his face unreadable. "Now, Sam." The boy turned and ran. Mrs. Holloway, the widow who cooked and cleaned for Jonas twice a week, met them at the door with questions in her eyes and blankets in her hands. "Don't ask," Jonas said, carrying Clara inside. "Just help me." They got Clara into the spare bedroom. Mrs. Holloway stripped off the frozen clothes while Jonas waited in the hall pacing. "Mr. Mercer." The widow's voice called him back 10 minutes later. Her face was grim. "You'd better come see this." Clara lay beneath quilts now, her dark hair spread across the pillow. Mrs. Holloway had done what she could. But the hands. God, the hands. The left hand was wrapped in cloth, but Jonas could see the shape of it. 3 fingers gone to the second knuckle. The stumps were black, dead, already starting to smell. "They'll need to come off," Mrs. Holloway said quietly. "If they don't, the rot will spread. Take the whole hand. Maybe the arm." "Doc Whitmore won't do it." "Then someone else will have to." Jonas looked at her. "You know how? I've butchered enough hogs to understand the principle." The widow's voice was steady, but her hands shook slightly. "But I ain't never cut on a person before. I could kill her easy as save her. If we do nothing, she dies for certain. I know it." They stood there, 2 people who had no business making this choice, trying to figure out how to save a woman neither of them knew. "There's a bone saw in the barn," Jonas said finally. "I'll boil it. And whiskey, lots of whiskey, for her and for me." Jonas almost smiled. Almost. The surgery, if you could call it that, took 45 minutes. Clara didn't wake, which was a mercy. Mrs. Holloway worked with grim determination, cutting away the dead flesh, while Jonas held Clara still and tried not to look at what was happening to her hands. 3 fingers. Gone. When it was over, Mrs. Holloway bandaged the wounds and washed the blood from her own hands without a word. She was pale as milk, but steady. "I've done what I can," she said. "If the fever takes her, there ain't nothing more to do. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. She might still die, and if she lives—" Mrs. Holloway looked at him hard. "She's gonna need more help than I can give. You understand what you've brought into this house, Mr. Mercer. A woman who needs help. A scandal, a disgrace. Every tongue in Bitter Creek is gonna wag about this." "Let them wag." Mrs. Holloway studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded, something like respect in her eyes. "I'll be back tomorrow to check on her. Keep her warm. Try to get water in her if she wakes." She paused at the door. "The boy, the one from the coach, he's in the kitchen with Sam. I gave them both soup. Thank you." After she left, Jonas sat beside Clara's bed and watched her breathe. She looked smaller somehow, diminished by fever and loss. But even unconscious, there was something in her face, a stubbornness, a refusal to quit that reminded him of the letters she'd written. "I'm not looking for adventure or romance," she'd written. "I'm looking for purpose. A place where I can be useful. A life I choose, rather than one that chooses me." He'd read that line a dozen times, wondering what she meant by it. Now he knew. She'd chosen to save a stranger's child. She'd chosen to give everything she had down to her own fingers to keep that boy alive. That wasn't scandal. That was courage. "You fight," Jonas murmured, not sure if she could hear him. "You hear me, Clara Bennett? You fought 3 days in that snow. You don't get to quit now." She didn't answer, but her breathing steadied, and that was enough. The fever came that night. Jonas didn't sleep. He sat by Clara's bed with cool cloths and prayer wiping the sweat from her face when it appeared, talking to her when the silence got too heavy. He told her about the ranch, about the cattle. He ran the fences that always needed mending the winter that came harder every year. He told her about his wife Margaret, who died 4 years ago when scarlet fever swept through the valley. How she'd fought it for 3 weeks before she finally let go. He told her about Sam. He stopped talking after Margaret passed, Jonas said, wringing out another cloth. Doc says there's nothing wrong with him, nothing physical. He just stopped. Like the words got stuck somewhere inside and couldn't find their way out. Clara's eyelids flickered. Just a twitch, but Jonas noticed. Some folks say I should send him away. There's schools back east for children like him, but I can't. His voice caught. He's all I got left of her. I can't lose him too. Clara's lips moved. No sound but movement. Jonas leaned closer. Clara, can you hear me? Boy. What? The boy. Alive. Her eyes opened. Gray eyes clouded with fever but conscious. Aware. Thomas is fine, Jonas said quickly. Not a scratch on him. You saved him, Clara. You kept him alive for 3 days. Relief washed across her face, so pure it nearly broke him. Thank God. Her voice was barely a whisper. Thank God. You need to rest now. The fever. My hands. She tried to lift them, couldn't. I can't feel my hands. Jonas didn't know what to say, so he told her the truth. You lost 3 fingers. Frostbite took them. Mrs. Holloway had to cut them off before the rot spread. Clara was quiet for a long moment. Then, the boy lived. Yes. Then it was worth it. She closed her eyes, and for a terrible second Jonas thought she was gone. But her chest rose, rose again, still breathing, still fighting. Not to come. Morning came gray and cold, the kind of morning that pressed against the windows and promised more snow. Jonas had dozed in the chair beside Clara's bed, waking whenever her breathing changed. She'd slept through the worst of the night, the fever breaking sometime around dawn. When he went to check on the boys, he found them in the kitchen. Thomas sat at the table, wrapped in one of Sam's old coats, staring at nothing. Sam sat across from him, equally silent, but there was something in the way he watched Thomas, a recognition maybe. One wounded child seeing another. You boys hungry? Jonas asked. Thomas shook his head. Sam didn't respond at all. All right. Thomas, I need to send word to your family. Is there someone I should contact? Relatives. My grandma. Thomas's voice was hollow. In Chicago. She didn't want us to go west. She said it was dangerous. Jonas winced. I'll send a telegram today. She'll come for you. What about Miss Clara? What about her? Is she going to die too? Jonas crouched down so he was eye level with the boy. Thomas was thin pale, with the kind of haunted look that came from seeing too much, too young. I don't know, Jonas said honestly. She's strong. She fought hard to keep you alive. But she's hurt real bad. She kept talking to me. Thomas's eyes filled with tears. Even when I could tell, it hurt her to talk. She told me stories about the war, about the soldiers she helped. She said if she could keep them alive in that hospital, she could keep me alive in the snow. Jonas felt something shift in his chest. She was in the war. She was a nurse. She said she held a man's hand while a doctor cut off his leg, and the man didn't even scream because she was singing to him. Thomas wiped his nose with his sleeve. She sang to me, too. When it got really cold, she sang hymns. A Civil War nurse. A woman who'd held dying men together with nothing but her hands and her voice. A woman who'd been thrown away by her hospital, her family, her fiancé, and who'd still use those same hands to save a child she'd never met. She's gonna live, Jonas said, and he believed it. Women like that don't quit. The first real words Clara said came 3 days later. She'd been drifting in and out taking water when Jonas offered it, sleeping more than she was awake. But on the third morning, he walked in to find her sitting up, examining the bandages on her hands with a clinical detachment that spoke of training. "You did a clean job," she said without looking up. Whoever handled the amputation knew what they were doing. "Mrs. Holloway, she's a widow who helps around the house. She said she learned from butchering hogs." Clara laughed a short, surprised sound. "That explains the technique. It's crude but effective." She finally looked at him. "You're Jonas Mercer." "Yes, ma'am." "I have your letters in my trunk, assuming the trunk survived." "It did. It's in the front room." She was quiet for a moment, studying him with those gray eyes. "You're not what I expected." "Neither are you." "What did you expect?" Jonas considered the question. "Someone smaller, I guess. Your letters made you sound—" He struggled for the word. "Careful. Like you were always thinking 3 steps ahead." "I am, usually." She looked at her bandaged hands again. "Being careful didn't help much in that stagecoach." "Being brave did. Thomas told me what you did. How you covered him kept him warm." "Thomas." Her face softened. "Is he—" "He's fine. Scared, grieving his parents, but fine. I sent word to his grandmother in Chicago. She'll come for him as soon as the road's clear." Clara nodded slowly. "Good. That's good. There's something you should know." Jonas pulled the chair closer to her bed and sat down. "I took you to the town doctor when I found you. Man named Harlan Whitmore." Her expression didn't change, but something behind her eyes went still. "Let me guess. He refused to treat me. Said he knew about what happened in Boston. Called it a scandal." "It was a scandal." Her voice was flat. "A man was dying. His skin was the wrong color, and the doctor in charge decided that made him less than human. I disagreed. I treated him anyway. He lived." She shrugged a small movement that seemed to cost her. "I lost everything else." "That ain't scandal. That's decency." Clara looked at him sharply. "Most people don't see it that way." "Most people are wrong." Something flickered across her face. Surprise maybe, or something softer. But she shut it down quick. "Mr. Mercer, I appreciate what you've done for me. Truly. But you should know that keeping me here is going to cause you trouble. Dr. Whitmore has influence in this town. He won't like that you've taken me in. I don't much care what Harlan Whitmore likes. You might care when he turns the whole town against you." Jonas leaned forward. "Miss Bennett, let me tell you something about myself. 4 years ago, my wife died. Scarlet fever took her in 3 weeks. The whole time she was sick, I begged Doc Whitmore to do something, anything. You know what he told me?" Clara shook her head. "He told me that if God wanted her to live, she'd live, and that I should stop bothering him and let nature take its course." Jonas's voice was steady, but his hands had curled into fists. "She died 3 days later, in my arms, asking me to take care of our son. I'm sorry. I ain't telling you for sympathy. I'm telling you because Harlan Whitmore could stand on the church steps and call me the devil himself, and I wouldn't lose a wink of sleep over it. That man left my wife to die. His opinion means less than nothing to me." Clara was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was softer. "You have a son." "Samuel. He's 8. He doesn't talk." "Doesn't talk." "Hasn't said a word since his mother passed. Doc says it's in his head, not his throat. But 4 years is a long time to be silent." "It is." Clara's gray eyes held something new, now understanding maybe. The kind that came from knowing about wounds that couldn't be seen. "May I meet him?" "He's been watching your door since you got here. I think he's curious." "Then let him in. I'd like to thank him." "Thank him for what?" Clara smiled, small but real. "For being brave enough to be curious about a stranger." Sam came to her door that afternoon. Jonas watched from the hallway as his son approached Clara's bed with the careful movements of a deer scenting danger. Sam was carrying something in his hands, a piece of paper folded into a small square. Clara accepted it with her bandaged hands, awkward but determined. "May I open it?" Sam nodded. Inside the paper was a drawing. A woman with dark hair lying in snow with a smaller figure curled against her. Above them, a large shape that might have been a broken stagecoach, and in the corner, a man on a horse coming toward them. Clara stared at it for a long moment. "You drew this?" Sam nodded again. "It's beautiful." Her voice had gone thick. "You saw this in your mind." Another nod. "Sam." She looked at him directly the way Jonas had seen her look at Thomas, with full attention, like he was the only person in the world. "I want to tell you something. Can I do that?" Sam hesitated, then nodded. "When I was in that stagecoach keeping Thomas warm, I thought about giving up. Many times. It would have been easier to sleep, to let the cold take me. Do you know what kept me going?" Sam shook his head. "I thought about the people who were waiting for me. Your father, who'd written me such thoughtful letters, and a boy he mentioned who sounded like he needed someone to understand him." Clara's voice was gentle, but certain. "I kept going because I thought maybe when I got here I could help. I could be useful to someone." Sam's eyes were fixed on her face. "I don't know if I can be useful now." She lifted her bandaged hands slightly. "I don't know what I can do with these. But I'm going to try. Because that's what you do when people are counting on you. You keep going." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Sam stepped forward and placed his hand, small, warm, alive, on top of Clara's bandaged one. He didn't speak. But the gesture said everything. Jonas, watching from the doorway, felt his eyes burn. Maybe this was how healing started. Not with doctors or medicine, but with two wounded souls recognizing each other. Maybe bringing Clara Bennett home was the best decision he'd ever made. Or maybe it was the beginning of something none of them were prepared for. The snow continued to fall, burying Bitter Creek under a white silence. But inside the Mercer Ranch, something was shifting. Something that felt almost like hope. The first week passed in fever and sleep and small victories. Clara learned to hold a cup with 7 fingers instead of 10. She learned to button her dress with hands that shook and ached and refused to cooperate. She learned that pride was a luxury she could no longer afford. Mrs. Holloway came every day to change her bandages, and every day Clara studied what lay beneath them with the same clinical detachment she'd once used in the hospital wards. "You're healing clean," Mrs. Holloway said on the 7th morning. "Better than I expected." "You did good work." "I did desperate work." The widow's hands were gentle, despite her gruff tone. "There's a difference. Sometimes desperate work is the only kind that matters." Mrs. Holloway paused, looking at Clara with something like respect. "You talk like someone who knows about desperate work." "I was a nurse in the war. Desperate was the only kind we had." "The war." Mrs. Holloway shook her head slowly. "I lost my husband at Antietam. Never even got his body back." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. It was a long time ago." She finished the bandaging and stood. "The boy's been waiting outside your door for an hour. The quiet one. Sam." Clara's heart did something strange. "Send him in." Sam appeared in the doorway moments later, clutching another folded paper in his hands. He'd been coming every day since that first visit, always with a drawing, always silent, always watching Clara with those 2 old eyes. "Good morning, Sam." Clara patted the edge of her bed. "Come show me what you've made." He approached slowly and handed her the paper. This one showed a woman standing in a garden surrounded by flowers. The woman had dark hair like Clara's, and she was smiling. "Is this me?" Sam nodded. "But I'm not standing yet, and there's no garden." Sam pointed to the corner of the drawing where he'd written something in careful, childish letters, "Spring." Clara felt her throat tighten. "You drew what you hope will happen." Another nod. "Sam, that's—" She had to stop, compose herself. "That's the kindest thing anyone has given me in a very long time." He didn't smile. She'd never seen him smile, but something in his posture relaxed, like he'd been holding his breath, waiting to see if his gift would be accepted. "Will you sit with me for a while?" Clara asked. "I'd like to tell you a story, if you want to hear one." Sam climbed onto the chair beside her bed, tucking his legs beneath him. His eyes were fixed on her face with an intensity that would have been unsettling from anyone else. But Clara understood that intensity. She'd seen it in soldiers who'd lost the ability to speak, men whose words had been blown away by cannon fire and screaming shells. "When I was a nurse," she began, "there was a soldier named William. He was young, maybe 19, and he'd been shot in the throat. The bullet didn't kill him, but it damaged something inside. He couldn't talk anymore." Sam went very still. The other nurses didn't know what to do with him. They'd ask him questions and get frustrated when he couldn't answer. They'd talk about him like he wasn't there, like being silent meant being stupid. Clara shook her head. But William wasn't stupid. He was scared and lonely and trapped inside himself. Sam's hands had curled into fists in his lap. "So I started bringing him paper and pencil. And every day I'd sit with him and let him write or draw whatever he wanted. At first it was just scribbles, angry marks on the page. But after a while it became words, and the words became sentences, and the sentences became his voice." Clara reached out carefully with her bandaged hand and touched Sam's fist. He never spoke again, not out loud, but he found a way to be heard, and that's what matters, Sam. Not the sound of your voice, but whether someone is listening. Sam stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly, he uncurled his fists and placed his hands flat on his knees. "I'm listening," Clara said softly. "Whenever you're ready in whatever way you choose, I'm listening." He didn't respond. But when he left an hour later, he looked back at her from the doorway, with something in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Hope, maybe. Or the beginning of trust. Either way, it was enough. Jonas found her crying that afternoon. He'd come to check on her, something he did several times a day, though he always kept his distance, hovering in the doorway like he was afraid to come too close. "Clara." He stepped into the room, concern replacing his usual careful reserve. "What's wrong? Is it the pain?" "No." She wiped her eyes with her forearm, embarrassed to be caught so vulnerable. "It's nothing. I'm fine." "You're crying." "People cry sometimes. It doesn't always mean something's wrong." Jonas stood there uncertain, like a man who'd forgotten how to comfort someone. Finally, he pulled the chair closer to her bed and sat down. "Sam showed me the drawing," he said quietly. "The one of you in the garden. He's talented. He's never drawn anything like that before. Pictures of what he hopes for, I mean. Usually he draws what he sees or what he remembers. Dark things mostly. His mother's face, the cemetery." Clara's heart ached. He's carrying a lot of grief for someone so young. "Too much." Jonas's voice was rough. "I don't know how to help him. I've tried talking to him, tried being patient, tried giving him space. Nothing works." "Maybe nothing is supposed to work." He looked at her sharply. "What does that mean?" "It means grief doesn't have a schedule. It doesn't respond to strategies or patience or the right words." Clara met his eyes. "Sam will heal when he's ready. All you can do is be there when it happens. And if he's never ready, then you keep being there anyway. That's what love is." Jonas was quiet for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was different, softer, more raw. "Margaret, my wife, she was better at this than me. She always knew what to say, how to reach him. When she died, I kept thinking she'd tell me what to do, give me some kind of sign. But there's nothing. Just silence, and a boy who won't talk, and me trying to hold it all together." "You're doing better than you think." "Am I?" "Because most days I feel like I'm drowning." Clara reached out before she could stop herself, placing her bandaged hand over his. The contact seemed to startle him, but he didn't pull away. "You saved my life," she said. "You brought me into your home when the doctor refused to help. You let your son sit with a stranger because you could see he needed it. That's not drowning, Jonas. That's swimming." He looked at her hand on his, then at her face. Something passed between them. Recognition, maybe, or the beginning of something neither of them was ready to name. "I should let you rest," he said, standing abruptly. "Mrs. Holloway left soup on the stove. I'll bring you some." "Jonas." He paused at the door. Thank you. For everything." He nodded once, not looking at her, and left. Clara lay back against her pillows and stared at the ceiling. Her heart was beating too fast, and she didn't know whether to blame the fever or something else entirely. "Don't," she told herself. "Don't do this. You're here because you had nowhere else to go. He's kind because he's a decent man. That's all this is." But even as she thought it, she knew it wasn't true. Something was changing between them. Something neither of them had asked for or expected. And Clara had no idea what to do about it. Thomas left 2 weeks after the accident. His grandmother arrived on the stage from Chicago, a small, fierce woman named Adelaide Wheeler, who took one look at Clara's bandaged hands and burst into tears. "She saved him," Adelaide said, gripping Clara's arm. "My grandson is alive because of you." Any decent person would have done the same. "No." Adelaide's voice was fierce. "Any decent person would have tried. You succeeded. There's a difference." She pressed a small pouch into Clara's hands. It was heavy with coins. "I can't accept this," Clara said. "You can and you will. It's nothing compared to what you gave." Adelaide glanced at Thomas, who was standing by the door with Sam, the two boys exchanging an awkward goodbye that consisted mostly of silence and shuffling feet. "You gave me my grandson. You gave him a chance to grow up to have a life. No amount of money could repay that." Clara tried to give the pouch back, but Adelaide was already walking toward Thomas. "Say goodbye to Miss Clara," she told the boy, "and thank her properly." Thomas approached the bed slowly. His face had lost some of its haunted look over the past 2 weeks, though Clara knew the grief would stay with him forever. Some wounds didn't heal. You just learned to live around them. "Thank you," Thomas said quietly, "for keeping me warm, for telling me stories, for not giving up." "You're very welcome, Thomas." Clara squeezed his hand with her damaged fingers. "You're going to be all right. Do you believe me?" He nodded slowly. "Miss Clara." "Yes." "Sam talked to me." Clara's heart stopped. "What?" "Last night. Just one word. But he said it." Thomas glanced back at Sam, who was watching from the doorway with his usual unreadable expression. He said, "Goodbye." Clara looked at Jonas, who had gone absolutely still. "He said goodbye." Jonas's voice was barely a whisper. Sam spoke. "Just that one word." Thomas looked between the adults, sensing he'd said something important. "Was that wrong?" "No." Clara felt tears threatening again. "No, Thomas, that wasn't wrong at all." After Thomas and Adelaide left, Jonas went to find Sam. Clara heard them in the hallway. Jonas's voice low and careful, asking questions. Sam's silence in response. Then footsteps, a door closing, and Jonas reappearing in her doorway, looking like a man who'd been punched in the chest. "He won't talk to me," Jonas said. "I asked him about what Thomas said, and he just stared at me, like I was a stranger." "Give him time." "Time." Jonas laughed bitterly. "It's been 4 years, Clara. 4 years of time. 4 years of patience and space and everything everyone told me to try. And he speaks one word to a boy he's known for 2 weeks, but he won't say a thing to me. Maybe that's exactly why." "What?" Clara struggled to sit up straighter, wincing at the pull in her healing hands. "Thomas doesn't expect anything from Sam. Thomas doesn't need Sam to be okay or fixed or better. Thomas is just another wounded child who understands what it means to hurt." Jonas stared at her. "You love Sam so much that your hope is a weight on him," Clara continued gently. "Every time you look at him, he sees how much you want him to speak. How much it hurts you that he doesn't. And that pressure, even though it comes from love, makes it harder for him to break through. So I should stop caring. Stop hoping. No, you should keep caring and keep hoping, but stop showing him that his silence is breaking your heart. Let him be silent without feeling like he's failing you." Jonas sank into the chair beside her bed, his head in his hands. "I don't know how to do that," he admitted. "I don't know how to hide what I feel." "Then don't hide it from everyone. just from him. Clara reached out and touched his shoulder. You can fall apart with me. You can tell me all the things you can't say to Sam. But when you're with him, just be his father. Not a man waiting for a miracle, just his father. Jonas was quiet for a long time. When he finally looked up, his eyes were wet. How do you know all of this about grief and children and what people need? Because I've been the one who couldn't speak. Clara's voice was soft, not literally like Sam. But after the scandal in Boston, after my family disowned me, after everyone I thought loved me turned away, I lost my words too. For months I couldn't say anything real to anyone. I just went through the motions, smiling when I was supposed to smile, nodding when I was supposed to nod, but inside, I was completely silent. What brought you back? A patient, an old woman dying of consumption. She couldn't talk, either her lungs were too damaged, but she'd hold my hand and look at me like she could see everything I was hiding, and one day she wrote me a note. Just 4 words. What did it say? You're still in there. Clara's eyes burned with unshed tears. That's all, but it was enough. It reminded me that the silence wasn't permanent, that the person I used to be was still inside just waiting for permission to come back. Jonas reached up and covered her hand with his. You're still in there, Clara, he said quietly. Whatever you lost in Boston, whatever those people took from you, you're still in there. I can see it. For a moment, neither of them moved. The air between them felt charged heavy with things neither of them was ready to say. Then Jonas pulled back, clearing his throat. I should check on Sam. Yes, you should. He stood but paused at the door. Clara. Yes. Thank you for listening, for understanding. He struggled with something, then finally said, Margaret would have liked you. She always could tell when someone was genuine. He left before Clara could respond. She lay there for a long time after staring at the ceiling, her heart doing things she didn't want to examine too closely. Mrs. Holloway noticed, of course. You're looking at him different, the widow said 2 days later, rewrapping Clara's bandages with brisk efficiency. Don't think I haven't seen it. I don't know what you mean. Course you do, and he's looking at you different too, though he'd deny it 6 ways from Sunday. Mrs. Holloway tied off the bandage and sat back. I ain't judging. Man's been alone too long. But you should know what you're walking into. I'm not walking into anything. Not yet. But you will. And when you do this, town is gonna have opinions. Mrs. Holloway's voice was matter-of-fact. A mail-order bride with a scandal behind her taking up with a widower before the ink's dry on her arrival. The gossips will have a field day. Let them. Easy to say when you're bedridden. Harder when you're trying to buy flour at the general store and women are whispering behind your back. Clara met the widow's eyes steadily. I've survived worse than whispers. I know you have. Holloway's expression softened slightly. That's why I'm warning you instead of judging you. You seem like good people, Clara Bennett. So does Jonas Mercer. But good people can still get hurt by small-minded folks with nothing better to do than tear others down. What would you have me do? Leave? Heavens no. I'd have you go in with your eyes open, that's all. Mrs. Holloway stood gathering her supplies. And maybe arm yourself with some allies before the battle starts. Allies? There's more decent folk in Bitter Creek than not. They just need someone to remind them of it. The widow paused at the door. I'll start spreading word about what you did for that Wheeler boy. 3 days in the snow losing fingers to keep him alive. That's the kind of story that makes people think twice before they judge. You don't have to do that. I know I don't. Mrs. Holloway smiled, the first real smile Clara had seen from her. But I'm going to anyway. Consider it payment for making Jonas Mercer look alive again. I was starting to think that man had given up entirely. After she left, Clara thought about what she'd said. Jonas looking alive again. Was that true? Clara tried to remember what he'd looked like that first day when he'd carried her into town and been turned away by Dr. Whitmore. She'd been barely conscious, more dead than alive, but she remembered his face, the set of his jaw, the weariness in his eyes. He didn't look that way anymore, and neither she realized did she. Sam started bringing her more than drawings. He brought books from his father's small library, adventure stories, histories, a worn volume of Shakespeare that had clearly belonged to his mother. He brought wildflowers he'd found pushing through the snow near the creek. He brought smooth stones and interesting sticks, and once memorably, a very confused frog that he'd apparently rescued from the ice. He never spoke, but his gifts spoke for him, each one a sentence in a language Clara was learning to read. The book said, "I want to share things with you." The flowers said, "I notice what's beautiful." The frog said, "I thought this would make you smile." It did make her smile. Everything he brought made her smile, and slowly something that had been frozen inside Clara began to thaw. "He's different with you," Jonas said one evening, watching from the doorway as Sam arranged his latest offering, a collection of bird feathers, on Clara's bedside table. "More open. He's different with everyone lately. Haven't you noticed?" Jonas frowned. "What do you mean?" "He helped Mrs. Holloway carry firewood yesterday, without being asked. And this morning I saw him wave at the postman through the window. He waved, just a small wave, but still." Jonas looked at his son with an expression Clara couldn't quite read. Hope, maybe. Or fear of hope, which was somehow worse. "Sam," Jonas said carefully, "Mrs. Holloway is coming tomorrow to check on Clara's hands. Would you like to help?" Sam turned to look at his father. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then slowly he nodded. It was such a small thing. A nod. An acknowledgement. But Jonas's face transformed like he'd witnessed a miracle. "Good," Jonas managed. That's good, son." Sam turned back to his feathers, arranging them by color. But Clara caught the tiny twitch at the corner of his mouth. Not quite a smile, but close. Clara started walking on the first day of her 4th week at the ranch. Mrs. Holloway had declared her healed enough to try, and Jonas had built her a cane from a sturdy branch, smoothing the handle with his knife until it fit perfectly in her palm. "It ain't pretty," he said, handing it to her. "But it'll hold your weight." "It's perfect." Clara gripped the cane and swung her legs over the side of the bed. Her muscles screamed in protest. Weeks of lying down had weakened them more than she'd expected, but she gritted her teeth and pushed herself upright. Jonas hovered nearby, ready to catch her if she fell. "I've got it," Clara said, though she wasn't sure she did. "I know. I'm just hovering. Observing." She laughed despite herself, and the sound seemed to startle both of them. When had she last laughed? She couldn't remember. "All right." Clara took a breath. "Here I go." The first step was agony. The second was worse. By the third, she was gripping the cane so hard her knuckles had gone white, and sweat was beading on her forehead. But she was standing. She was walking. "That's enough for today," Jonas said, moving to help her back to bed. "One more step." "Clara, one more." She took it, and then, because she was stubborn, and because she needed to prove something to herself, she took another. "That's 5 steps," she said, allowing Jonas to guide her back to the mattress. "Tomorrow, I'll do 10. "You're going to hurt yourself pushing too hard." "Probably." Clara sank onto the bed, exhausted but triumphant. "But I've been helpless for a month. I need to feel like myself again." Jonas sat beside her, close enough that she could smell the pine soap he used, close enough that she was suddenly very aware of how thin her nightgown was. "You've never been helpless," he said quietly. "Not for 1 minute." "That's kind of you to say." "It's not kind. It's true." He turned to face her. "You saved Thomas with your body when you couldn't save him with your hands. You reached Sam with your words when I couldn't reach him at all. You've been helping Mrs. Holloway organize the medical supplies she didn't even know were disorganized. Helpless people don't do those things, Clara." "I want to do more." "Why?" The question caught her off guard. "What do you mean, why?" "Because I need to earn my keep. Because I can't just lie in this bed forever, taking up space and resources and—" "Clara." His hand covered hers, stopping the flood of words. "You don't have to earn anything. You're welcome here because I want you here. Sam wants you here, not because of what you can do for us." She stared at him, tears suddenly burning her eyes. No one has ever... She stopped, unable to finish. No one has ever what? Wanted me just for being me. The words came out broken. My whole life I've had to be useful, be the good daughter, be the skilled nurse, be the proper fiancée. And the moment I stopped being useful to them, the moment I did something they didn't approve of, they threw me away. Jonas's grip on her hand tightened. Then they were fools, he said. All of them. Jonas. I mean it. His voice was fierce, his eyes burning with an intensity that made her heart stutter. The people who threw you away don't deserve you. They never did. And whatever happens next, whether you stay here or move on or find some other path. I want you to know that you have value, Clara Bennett. Real value. Not because of your nursing skills or your useful hands or anything you can do, just because of who you are. The tears spilled over. Clara couldn't stop them. And then Jonas did something unexpected. He pulled her into his arms and held her. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't sexual. It was simply one human being offering comfort to another, and Clara melted into it like she'd been waiting her whole life for someone to hold her this way. She cried into his shoulder, weeks of pain and fear and loneliness pouring out of her, while he held on and didn't let go. When the storm finally passed, she pulled back embarrassed. I'm sorry, I ruined your shirt. I've got other shirts. Jonas, don't apologize. His voice was gruff, but his eyes were gentle. Don't ever apologize for needing comfort. Everyone needs it sometimes. Even you. Something flickered across his face. Especially me. They sat in silence for a moment, the air between them charged with everything that had just happened and everything that hadn't. I should make dinner, Jonas said, finally standing. Sam's probably hungry. Jonas. He paused. Thank you. For everything. For saving me. For bringing me here. For... She gestured vaguely at the space between them. For this. He nodded once, not quite meeting her eyes. You're welcome, he said. And then he was gone, leaving Clara alone with her thoughts and her feelings, and the growing certainty that she was falling in love with Jonas Mercer. The certainty that she would have to do something about it. But not today. Today, she would practice walking. Today, she would help Sam with his letters. Today, she would be present in this life she was building one small step at a time. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. Clara had learned a long time ago not to borrow trouble from the future. The present had more than enough to go around. The first time Clara walked to the kitchen without her cane, Sam was waiting for her at the table. He'd set out 2 cups and a pot of tea that was probably too strong. He was still learning, but the gesture made Clara's heart squeeze painfully. You made this yourself. Sam nodded, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. It looks perfect. Clara lowered herself into the chair across from him, hiding the wince that came with sitting down. Her legs were stronger now, but mornings were still difficult. Thank you, Sam. He poured the tea with careful concentration, tongue poking out slightly between his lips. When he handed her the cup, their fingers brushed, and Sam didn't flinch away like he used to. Progress. Small and precious and hard-won. I was thinking, Clara said, wrapping her damaged hands around the warm cup, that maybe today we could work on your letters. You've been doing so well with reading. Writing is the next step. Sam's expression shifted. Not quite fear, but something close to it. Only if you want to, Clara added quickly. There's no pressure. We can wait. He stared at his cup for a long moment. Then slowly he reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Clara took it, unfolding it carefully. Inside, in shaky but legible handwriting, were 2 words. Thank you. Her breath caught. Sam, you wrote this? He nodded, watching her face intently. When... He held up 3 fingers. 3 days ago. He'd been practicing in secret for 3 days. This is... Clara had to stop, her voice threatening to break. This is wonderful. You should be so proud of yourself. Something happened then. Something Clara would remember for the rest of her life. Sam smiled. It was small, hesitant, like a muscle that hadn't been used in too long. But it was real, and it transformed his face from something guarded and old into something that actually looked like an 8-year-old boy. "Can I show your father?" The smile faded slightly, replaced by uncertainty. "He would be so proud of you, Sam. You know that, don't you?" Sam looked down at his cup. His small shoulders rose and fell in a shrug that said more than words could. "He loves you," Clara said gently. "Everything he does. Everything he's done since your mother passed. It's because he loves you so much it scares him." Sam's eyes came up sharp and searching. "I know what it's like to be scared of losing someone," Clara continued. "After my mother died, my father couldn't even look at me for months. I thought he blamed me, thought I'd done something wrong, but later I realized the truth. He looked at me and saw her, and it hurt too much to bear." Sam's hands had curled into fists on the table. "Your father looks at you and sees your mother too. That's not a bad thing, Sam. It means she's still here in some way. It means she's not completely gone." Clara reached across the table and covered his fist with her bandaged hand. "But it also means your father needs time to separate his grief from his love. He's working on it. Every day, he's working on it." Sam stared at her hand on his. Then slowly, his fingers uncurled. He picked up his pencil and wrote something else on the paper. "Does he want me to talk?" Clara's heart broke a little more. "He wants you to be happy," she said. "However that looks. If you never speak another word out loud, he'll still love you. If you talk a mile a minute, he'll still love you. The silence doesn't change anything, Sam. It never did." Sam was quiet for a long time. Then he wrote, "I want to try." "Then try. Whenever you're ready. There's no rush." He nodded slowly, folding the paper and putting it back in his pocket. But before Clara could say anything else, the kitchen door opened, and Jonas walked in, stomping snow from his boots. "Smells like tea," he said, then stopped when he saw them at the table. "Everything all right?" "Everything's fine." Clara caught Sam's eye and gave him a small nod. "Sam made tea. It's excellent." Jonas looked at his son with something like wonder. "You made tea?" Sam nodded. "That's—" Jonas cleared his throat. "That's real thoughtful of you, son." For a moment nobody moved. Then Sam got up, walked over to his father, and did something Clara had never seen him do. He hugged him. Jonas froze, arms hovering uncertainly, like he was afraid the moment would shatter if he moved wrong. Then slowly, carefully, he wrapped his arms around his son and held on. "Hey there," Jonas whispered into Sam's hair. "Hey, I've got you." Clara looked away, giving them privacy, but she could hear Jonas's breathing go ragged, could hear the small sounds of a father trying not to cry. When she looked back, Sam had pulled away and was staring at the floor, but Jonas was looking at her. "Thank you," he mouthed. She shook her head slightly. "You did this, not me." But they both knew that wasn't entirely true. Something had shifted in this kitchen. Something important. And Clara had been part of making it happen. The trouble came 2 days later. Clara had been feeling strong enough that Mrs. Holloway suggested a trip to town. "You need to show your face," the widow said bluntly. "People are talking, and the longer you hide out here, the worse the talk gets." "I'm not hiding. I'm recovering." "I know that, and you know that, but the gossips don't care about truth. They care about stories." Mrs. Holloway handed Clara a clean dress, one that had belonged to Jonas's wife. He'd offered it awkwardly, saying Margaret would have wanted someone to use it. Time to give them a different story. So Clara went to town. Jonas drove the wagon with Sam sitting between them on the bench seat. The boy had been practically bouncing with excitement when he learned they were going. Apparently trips to town were rare, and Sam wanted to show Clara the general store where Mr. Patterson kept penny candy under the counter. "He only gives it to kids who don't make trouble," Sam wrote on his slate. "I never make trouble." "I believe you," Clara said, and Sam's almost smile appeared again. Bitter Creek looked different in daylight. Less menacing, more sad. The buildings were weathered, the street was mud and ice, and the people moved with the hunched determination of folks who'd learned not to expect much from life. But they stopped moving when they saw Jonas's wagon. Clara felt eyes on her from every direction. Women paused mid-conversation to stare. Men tipped their hats with expressions that ranged from curiosity to outright hostility. "Ignore them," Jonas said quietly. "They're just nosy. Some of them look like more than nosy. Some of them are, but they won't do anything." He was wrong. They made it to the general store without incident. Mr. Patterson, a round man with kind eyes and a thick mustache, greeted them warmly. "Mr. Mercer and young Sam, haven't seen you two in a month." His eyes fell on Clara, and something complicated crossed his face. "And you must be Miss Bennet. I've heard about you." "I imagine everyone has," Clara said evenly. "Indeed." Patterson studied her for a moment, then smiled. "Mrs. Holloway told me what you did for that Wheeler boy. 3 days in the snow keeping him alive with nothing but your own body heat. That takes grit." "It takes desperation. Grit is what comes after." Patterson laughed, a genuine sound that seemed to surprise even him. "I like her, Mercer. She's got spine." "She does at that." They were browsing the dry goods. Clara needed new bandages, and Jonas was looking at replacement tools when the door opened and everything changed. Doctors. Harlan Whitmore walked in like he owned the place. He was dressed impeccably as always. Silver hair, perfectly combed suit, pressed the very image of respectability. He nodded at Patterson, smiled at a woman near the fabric bolts, and then his eyes found Clara. "Miss Bennet." His voice carried across the store, designed to be heard by everyone present. "I didn't expect to see you up and about so soon. Remarkable recovery." "Thank you. Though I suppose I shouldn't be surprised. You nurses are hardy creatures." The word creatures dripped with condescension. "Tell me, how are the hands? I imagine losing fingers must make your work rather difficult." Clara felt Jonas stiffen beside her, but she kept her voice calm. "I'm adapting." "Are you—" Whitmore moved closer, and the other customers had gone silent, watching. "I've been reading some interesting correspondence from colleagues in Boston about your time at Massachusetts General." Here it comes, Clara thought. Fascinating story, really. A nurse who thought she knew better than her superiors, who defied direct orders from a physician. Whitmore's smile was sharp as a scalpel. Who nearly caused a riot in the ward because she couldn't accept that some patients are simply not worth the resources required to save them. That patient was a human being. That patient was a Negro laborer who'd been stabbed in a bar fight. Whitmore's voice rose. "A man of no consequence, no family, no value to society. And you, Miss Bennet, risked your career, your reputation, and the safety of everyone in that ward to save him. For what? A principle. For his life." His life. Whitmore laughed, and it was an ugly sound. "And where is he now, this man whose life was so precious? Dead in a ditch somewhere, I imagine. Or in prison. That's where his kind always ends up." His kind. Clara's voice went cold. "Criminals. Vagrants. The dregs of society that people like you insist on elevating beyond their station." Whitmore turned to address the gathering crowd. "This woman was dismissed from one of the finest hospitals in the nation. Her family disowned her. Her fiancé refused to marry her. And now she's here in our town living under Jonas Mercer's roof like some kind of—" "That's enough." Jonas stepped forward, his voice cutting through Whitmore's like a blade. "You've made your point, Doc. Now leave. I'm simply informing the good people of Bitter Creek about the character of the woman in their midst." Whitmore spread his hands in false innocence. "Don't they deserve to know the truth? They know all they need to know." Jonas was standing between Clara and Whitmore now, his body a shield. "They know she saved a child's life. They know she lost 3 fingers doing it. They know she's been nothing but helpful and kind since she got here. That's the truth that matters. Is it—" Whitmore smiled. "Or is it simply the truth that suits you, Mr. Mercer? After all, you brought this woman into your home, into your son's life. If she turns out to be everything I say she is, a disgrace, a troublemaker, a woman of questionable morals, what does that make you?" It makes me a man who judges people by their actions, not by gossip." "How noble." Whitmore's voice dripped with sarcasm. "And how naive. But then I shouldn't be surprised. You always did have a weakness for lost causes." He glanced at Sam, who was pressed against Jonas's side, face pale. "Your wife was the same way as I recall. Always taking in strays, always trying to fix broken things. Look where that got her." Jonas moved so fast Clara barely saw it. One moment he was standing in front of her. The next, he had Whitmore by the collar shoved against the store shelves hard enough to rattle the jars of preserves. "You don't talk about my wife." Jonas's voice was barely recognizable. "Ever. You hear me? Assault," Whitmore wheezed. "In front of witnesses. I could have you arrested." "Go ahead. Try it." "Jonas." Clara put her hand on his arm. "Let him go." "I know what he said. Let him go anyway." She squeezed his arm. "He's not worth it. He's not worth what this will cost you." For a long moment Jonas didn't move. His breathing was ragged, his hands white-knuckled on Whitmore's collar. Then slowly, he released the doctor and stepped back. Whitmore straightened his clothing with exaggerated dignity. "You'll regret that, Mercer." "Maybe. But not as much as you'll regret coming in here today." Jonas looked around at the watching crowd. "Everyone saw what happened. Everyone heard what you said about Margaret, about Clara, about people who are different from you. If that's the kind of man you are, Doc, then I reckon folks can make their own judgments about whether you deserve their trust." Whitmore's face flushed with anger. He opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, something unexpected happened. Mr. Patterson stepped out from behind his counter. "Dr. Whitmore," the shopkeeper said quietly, "I think you should leave." "Excuse me." "You heard me. Leave my store." "You can't be serious. I've been buying goods here for 15 years. And Miss Bennett saved a child's life while you stood by and did nothing." Patterson's voice was steady. "I know which one of you I'd rather have as a customer." Whitmore looked around the store searching for support. But the other customers were looking away, studying the floor, suddenly fascinated by the merchandise in their hands. "You'll all regret this," Whitmore said. "Every single one of you." He stormed out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. In the silence that followed, Clara realized she was shaking. "Miss Bennett." A woman approached, middle-aged, with a kind face and work-worn hands. "I'm Martha Wells. My husband runs the blacksmith shop." "Mrs. Wells, I want you to know that not everyone in this town shares Dr. Whitmore's views." Martha glanced at the others, who were starting to gather closer. "What you did for that Wheeler boy, that was brave. And what you did just now, standing there while that man tried to tear you down, that was brave too." "I didn't feel brave." "Brave people rarely do," Martha smiled. "I'd be honored to have you over for tea sometime, when you're feeling up to it." Clara blinked, overwhelmed. "Thank you. I'd like that." Other voices joined in. The woman from the fabric section said her daughter had been asking about nursing. Would Clara maybe talk to her sometime? An older man mentioned that his wife had a cough that wouldn't quit. Nothing. Doc Whitmore had tried, had helped. Maybe Clara had some ideas. Before she knew it, Clara was surrounded by people. Not hostile people. Not judging people. Just people who decided in that moment which side they were on. Jonas watched from the edge of the crowd, Sam still pressed against his side. When Clara caught his eye, he nodded slowly. "You did this," his expression said. "You earned this." But Clara shook her head slightly. "We did it together." The ride home was quiet. Sam had fallen asleep against Jonas's shoulder, exhausted by the day's events. Clara sat on Jonas's other side, close enough that their arms touched when the wagon hit ruts in the road. "Thank you," she said finally, "for defending me back there." "Didn't do much. Lost my temper is all. You stood up for me, in front of everyone." "Of course I did." Jonas's voice was rough. "What he said about you, what he implied, it wasn't right. It wasn't entirely wrong either." Clara stared at her hands in her lap. I did defy my superiors. I did nearly cause a riot. I did lose everything because of a principle. So, so maybe I deserved what happened. Maybe if I'd just done as I was told. Don't. Jonas's voice was sharp enough to make her look up. Don't you dare sit there and tell me you should have let that man die. Don't you dare say following orders was more important than saving a life. I'm not saying that. You're just wondering if the cost was worth it. If all the pain and loss and exile was justified by one man's survival. Jonas turned to look at her, his eyes fierce in the fading light. It was. Hear me, Clara. It was worth it. And anyone who says otherwise isn't worth your time. Clara felt tears threatening again. She seemed to cry so easily these days after years of keeping everything locked down tight. You really believe that? I know it. Jonas turned back to the road. You want to know what I see when I look at you? I see a woman who made an impossible choice and stood by it. Who lost everything rather than compromise who she was. Who ended up in a wrecked stagecoach in the middle of nowhere and still found a way to save someone else. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was softer. Margaret was like that. She never backed down from what she believed was right, even when it would have been easier. Even when it cost her. He smiled, but it was sad. That's why I loved her. And that's why. He stopped himself. That's why, what? Clara asked, her heart suddenly pounding. Nothing. It's not. Jonas shook his head. We should focus on what happened today. Whitmore's not going to let this go. Clara recognized the deflection for what it was. She let it happen because pushing right now wouldn't help either of them. What do you think he'll do? Hard to say. He's got influence, money, connections, respect from people who don't know any better. Jonas's jaw tightened. But he's also just showed his true colors in front of half the town. That'll cost him. Will it cost us more? Probably. He said it matter-of-factly, like they were discussing the weather. But we'll handle it. Together. Together. That word again. It kept appearing in their conversations, always carrying more weight than it should. Clara looked down at Sam sleeping peacefully against his father's shoulder. This boy who'd lost his mother, who'd stopped speaking, who was slowly, carefully learning to trust again. She looked at Jonas, who'd lost his wife, who'd been struggling alone for 4 years, who'd opened his home to a stranger because it was the right thing to do. She looked at her own hands, damaged but healing, missing fingers that had been the price of saving a child's life. Together. Maybe that was the answer. Not just to Whitmore, not just to the town's judgment, but to everything. Maybe the only way forward was together. That night, after Sam was in bed, Jonas found Clara sitting by the fire in the main room. He didn't say anything at first, just poured 2 glasses of whiskey and handed one to her before settling into the chair across from hers. You should be resting, he said finally. So should you. Can't sleep. Too much in my head. Me too. They sat in comfortable silence, the fire crackling between them. Clara found herself studying Jonas's face in the firelight. The strong jaw, the tired eyes, the silver starting to thread through his dark hair. Can I ask you something? She said. Depends on what it is. What you started to say in the wagon. About Margaret. About why you loved her. And why... Clara took a breath. Why, what, Jonas? He was quiet for so long she thought he wasn't going to answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. I was going to say that's why I'm falling in love with you too. The words hung in the air between them. Jonas. I know. I know it's too soon. I know we barely know each other. I know there are 100 reasons why this is a terrible idea. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. But I've spent 4 years being careful, being patient, being the responsible widower who doesn't burden anyone with his needs. And I'm tired, Clara. I'm so damn tired of being careful. I'm tired too, she whispered. Are you? His eyes found hers. Because if you don't feel, I do. The words came out before she could stop them. I do feel it. I've been feeling it for weeks, and I've been telling myself all the same things you have. Too soon. Too complicated. Too many reasons why it can't work. But I'm tired of talking myself out of things that might make me happy. Clara set down her whiskey and leaned forward. I've spent my whole life doing the sensible thing, the careful thing, the thing that everyone expected. And where did it get me? Alone and disgraced and bleeding in a snowbank. Clara, let me finish. She took a shaky breath. You saved my life, Jonas. Not just literally, although that too. You gave me a home when I had nowhere to go. You gave me a purpose with Sam. You gave me a reason to keep fighting when I was ready to give up. Her voice cracked. And somewhere in all of that, you gave me my heart back. Jonas stood so abruptly that Clara flinched. But he wasn't leaving. He was crossing the space between them, kneeling in front of her chair, taking her damaged hands in his. I'm not good at this, he said roughly. Words, feelings, any of it. Margaret used to say I was as subtle as a brick through a window. Clara laughed despite herself. That sounds about right. But I need you to know that whatever happens with Whitmore, with the town, with any of it, I'm not going anywhere. You're not just some woman I'm keeping here out of obligation or charity. You're... He struggled for the words. You're the first thing I've wanted for myself in 4 years. The first person who's made me feel like maybe I'm not just surviving, like maybe there's still something worth living for. Jonas. Clara freed one of her hands and cupped his face. I'm not going anywhere either. Even if it gets harder, even if Whitmore turns the whole town against us. Even then. She leaned forward and pressed her forehead against his. I survived the war. I survived Boston. I survived 3 days in a frozen stagecoach. I can survive small-minded gossips and a petty doctor with a grudge. That's my girl. She kissed him then, or maybe he kissed her. It didn't matter who moved first. What mattered was the feeling of his lips on hers, gentle and desperate and full of promise. When they finally pulled apart, they were both breathing hard. We should, Jonas's voice was rough. We should probably talk about tomorrow. Clara kissed him again, softer this time. We'll figure everything out tomorrow. For tonight, can we just... Yeah. He understood without her having to finish. We can just... He pulled her close, and she rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. The fire crackled. The wind howled outside. Somewhere in the house, Sam slept peacefully. And for the first time since the accident, Clara felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The week that followed was the strangest of Clara's life. Strange because nothing happened. No retaliation from Whitmore. No angry mobs at the door. No whispered threats or midnight violence. Just silence. That worries me more than anything, Mrs. Holloway said when she came to change Clara's bandages. Harlan Whitmore ain't the type to let things go. If he's quiet, it means he's planning. Planning what? That's what worries me. The widow tied off the bandage with her usual efficiency. Your hands are healing nicely, by the way. Another few weeks and you won't need these wrappings anymore. And the fingers that aren't there, those you'll learn to live around. Plenty of folks do. Mrs. Holloway studied Clara's face. Something else on your mind? Clara hesitated. She hadn't told anyone about what had happened with Jonas by the fire, about the kiss, about the words they'd exchanged, but keeping secrets from Mrs. Holloway felt impossible. The woman had a way of seeing through walls. Things have changed, Clara said carefully. Between Jonas and me. I know. You know. Child, I've been married twice and widowed twice. I know what a man looks like when he's fallen head over heels. Mrs. Holloway almost smiled. And I know what a woman looks like when she's fighting the same battle. Is it that obvious? To anyone with eyes. The widow began packing her supplies. Question is, what are you going to do about it? I don't know. We haven't talked about it. Not really. That night by the fire, we just... You kissed. Clara felt heat rise to her cheeks. Yes. And then, and then nothing. We went to our separate rooms. In the morning, we acted like it hadn't happened. Clara shook her head. It's been 5 days, and neither of us has said a word about it. Mrs. Holloway made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sigh. Men, give them a rifle and tell them to shoot a wolf. They'll do it without blinking. Ask them to talk about their feelings. They'd rather face the wolf barehanded. So what do I do? You give him time, but not too much. Jonas Mercer is a good man, but he's been hiding from his heart for 4 years. He's not going to come out easy. The widow stood gathering her bag. But don't let him hide forever. Some things need to be said out loud, or they rot from the inside. After she left, Clara sat in her room and thought about rotting things. Her whole life in Boston had rotted. Her engagement, her career, her family, all of it had decayed slowly, while she pretended everything was fine. She'd smiled through dinners with her fiancé, while knowing something was wrong. She'd nodded at her father's lectures, while feeling herself disappear. She'd watched her sister become a stranger, and done nothing to stop it. She wouldn't make that mistake again. That evening, she found Jonas in the barn. He was brushing his horse, long methodical strokes that spoke of habit rather than necessity. When he heard her footsteps, he went still. Clara, everything all right? No. She stopped a few feet away from him. We need to talk, Jonas. About? You know what about? He set down the brush and turned to face her. In the dim light of the barn, his face was hard to read. I've been thinking about that night, he said slowly. What I said. What we did. Having second thoughts. No. The word came out fast, certain. God, no. But I've been trying to figure out how to do this right. You're not some saloon girl I can court with flowers and pretty words. I'm what? You're the woman I want to spend my life with. Jonas's voice cracked on the last word. And that scares the hell out of me, Clara, because the last time I felt this way, I lost her. And I don't know if I can survive losing someone again. Clara closed the distance between them. She took his hands in hers, ignoring the protest from her damaged fingers. I can't promise you forever, she said. Nobody can. But I can promise you right now. I can promise to be here to fight for this, to choose you every single day for as long as I'm able. That's more than most people get. It's all I have to give. Jonas pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. She felt him shaking this strong, stoic man, who'd carried her through the snow, who'd stood up to Whitmore, who'd held his family together through grief and silence. I'm scared, he whispered. I know. Me too. What if I'm not enough? What if I can't be what you need? You already are. Clara pulled back to look at him. Jonas, you saved my life. Not just in the snow every day since. You've given me a home, a purpose, a family. You've shown me what it looks like when someone chooses you, not because they have to, but because they want to. I do want to. God, Clara, I want to so much. Then stop being scared. She kissed him softly. Or be scared and do it anyway. That's what courage is. He laughed, a broken sound that was half sob. You sound like Margaret. I'll take that as a compliment. It is. He cupped her face in his hands. She would have loved you. She would have said I was a fool for waiting this long. She would have been right. Jonas kissed her, then deeper than before, with a desperation that spoke of 4 years of loneliness finally finding its end. When they broke apart, they were both breathing hard. I want to marry you, he said. I know it's fast. I know we should wait, do this properly. But I don't want to wait, Clara. I've wasted enough time being careful. Are you proposing to me in a barn? I'm proposing to you in the only home I have to offer. His eyes were fierce. I'm proposing to you surrounded by horse manure and hay and the smell of honest work. I'm proposing to you without a ring or fancy words or any of the things you probably deserve. Jonas, marry me. Not because it's convenient or practical. Not because you need a home or I need a wife. Marry me because I love you and because I hope you love me too. Clara felt tears streaming down her face. She hadn't even noticed when they started. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes. Yes, you impossible man. Yes, I'll marry you." He lifted her off her feet and spun her around laughing like she'd never heard him laugh before. When he set her down, they were both grinning like fools. "We should tell Sam," Clara said. Jonas's grin faltered slightly. "You're right. He should hear it from us, not figure it out on his own." "Are you worried how he'll react?" "I don't know how he'll react. That's what worries me." Jonas took her hand. "Come on, let's find out together." Sam was in his room drawing by candlelight. When Jonas knocked on the open door, the boy looked up with his usual serious expression. But something flickered in his eyes when he saw Clara and Jonas standing together, hands intertwined. "Can we come in, son?" Jonas asked. Sam nodded, setting aside his pencil. They sat on the edge of his bed, Sam between them. Clara felt her heart pounding against her ribs. This moment mattered more than anything, more than Whitmore, more than the town, more than her own fears. "Sam," Jonas began. "Clara and I need to tell you something." The boy's eyes moved between them, watchful. Jonas faltered. "We've decided that we love each other," Clara said simply. "Your father and I. We love each other, and we want to be a family. A real family. If that's all right with you." Sam went very still. "I know it's a lot to take in," Clara continued. "And I know I can never replace your mother. I wouldn't try to. But I'd like to be part of your life, Sam. Not as a replacement for anyone, just as someone who cares about you very much." Silence stretched between them. Jonas's hand tightened on Clara's. Then Sam reached for his slate and chalk. He wrote slowly, carefully, his letters getting more confident with each word. "You love Papa." "Yes," Clara said. "Very much." Sam wrote again. "Papa loves you." "I do." Jonas said, his voice rough. "I really do, son." Sam stared at what he'd written for a long moment. Then he wiped the slate clean and wrote something else. "Mama would be happy." Jonas made a sound like he'd been punched. Clara felt tears threatening again. "You think so?" Jonas whispered. Sam nodded firmly. Then he set down the slate and did something that made both adults freeze. He opened his mouth. Sam's voice was rusty, unused, barely more than a whisper. "She told me." The words hung in the air like a miracle. "Sam." Jonas's voice shattered. "Sam, before she died." Sam's words came slowly, painfully, like each one cost him something. "Mama said, if Papa found someone who made him smile again, I should love her too." "Oh, sweetheart." Clara pulled him into her arms, feeling his small body tremble against hers. "Oh, Sam." "I wanted to tell you." Sam's voice was muffled against her shoulder. "I wanted to talk, but the words, they got stuck." "They're not stuck anymore." Jonas's arms wrapped around both of them, surrounding them in warmth. "You did it, son. You found them. Is it okay?" Sam pulled back to look at his father. "Is it okay that I talked?" Jonas was crying openly now, tears streaming down his weathered face. "It's more than okay. It's everything. You're everything, Sam. You always have been." They stayed like that for a long time. The three of them tangled together on Sam's narrow bed, crying and laughing, and holding on like they'd never let go. This was family, Clara thought. Not the one she'd been born into, but the one she'd chosen. The one that had chosen her back. This was what she'd been searching for her whole life. The news spread through Bitter Creek like wildfire. Mrs. Holloway told Mrs. Patterson, who told Martha Wells, who told everyone at the church social that Sunday. By Monday morning, half the town knew that Jonas Mercer was marrying the Bennett woman. The reactions were mixed. "Damn fool thing to do," grumbled old Earl Crawford at the saloon. "Marrying a stranger with a scandal behind her. What's he thinking? He's thinking she's brave and kind and good for his boy." Martha Wells shot back, which is more than anyone can say for some people in this town. "She's trouble. That Whitmore business proved it." That Whitmore business proved Harlan Whitmore is a cold-hearted snake. Nothing more, nothing less. The arguments continued, each side gathering supporters. But Clara noticed something surprising: the scales were tipping in her favor. More people smiled at her on the street than frowned. More women stopped to chat than turned away. "You're winning," Mrs. Holloway said with satisfaction. "I told you folks here have good hearts. They just need permission to show it." "It doesn't feel like winning. It feels like waiting for the other shoe to drop." "That's because you're smart." The widow's expression sobered. "Whitmore hasn't made a move yet, and that worries me. The man's got pride like a festering wound. He won't let this stand." The other shoe dropped 3 days later. Clara was in town picking up supplies at Patterson's store when she heard the commotion outside. Shouting voices, running feet, the sound of a crowd gathering. She stepped onto the boardwalk just as Dr. Whitmore climbed onto a crate in the middle of the street. "Citizens of Bitter Creek," his voice carried over the murmuring crowd, "I come before you today with grave news, news that affects every family in this town." Clara felt her stomach drop. "It has come to my attention," Whitmore continued, "that there is a dangerous element in our midst. A woman who calls herself a nurse, but who was dismissed in disgrace from her position. A woman who defied the natural order of things and paid the price for her arrogance." "We've heard all this before, Harlan," someone called out. "Move along." "Ah, but there's more." Whitmore smiled, and it was a terrible thing. "Much more. I've received correspondence from colleagues in Boston, official documents, and what I've learned is far worse than mere professional misconduct." Clara's heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. Clara Bennett was not just dismissed, she was investigated for the suspicious deaths of multiple patients under her care. The crowd gasped. "That's a lie," Clara said, but her voice was too quiet. Nobody heard. Patients who died under mysterious circumstances. Patients whose deaths were attributed to natural causes only because no one thought to look deeper. Whitmore held up a sheaf of papers. "I have the evidence right here. Witness statements, hospital records, the testimony of doctors who worked alongside this woman." "That's a lie." Clara's voice was stronger now, carrying over the crowd. "There was never any investigation. Those documents are fabricated." "Are they?" Whitmore turned to face her, his expression triumphant. "Then you won't mind if we examine them together, in front of the whole town. I won't dignify false accusations with a response." A convenient position for someone with something to hide. Whitmore addressed the crowd again. "Ask yourselves, do you want this woman treating your children, your mothers, your wives? A woman who was investigated for killing patients. She saved my grandson." A voice cut through the noise. Adelaide Wheeler's grandmother. Clara realized she must have come back to town for some reason. She lost 3 fingers keeping that boy alive. "And how many patients in Boston were less fortunate?" Whitmore shot back. "How many died because Clara Bennett thought she knew better than trained physicians?" The crowd was shifting, uncertainty rippling through them. Clara could see faces that had been friendly just days ago now looking at her with doubt. "This is ridiculous." Clara pushed through to the front of the crowd. "There was no investigation. There were no suspicious deaths. The only thing I did wrong in Boston was save a man's life when I was ordered not to. That's the whole scandal. That's all of it." "Then why were you dismissed?" "Because I defied orders from a doctor who thought a man's skin color made him less worth saving." "So you admit to defying orders, to thinking you knew better than your superiors?" Whitmore spread his hands. "What other orders might you have defied? What other decisions might you have made without authorization? I saved lives, that's all I ever did. And how many did you take?" Whitmore's voice dropped to a theatrical whisper. "That's the question, isn't it? How many Clara Bennett?" "None, I never." "Enough." The voice came from behind Clara, deep, certain, cutting through the chaos like a blade. "Jonas." He pushed through the crowd until he was standing beside her, his hand finding hers. "This ends now, Whitmore." "Mr. Mercer, come to defend your bride." Whitmore's smile was poisonous. "How touching. But I wonder, did she tell you about Boston before you proposed? Did she share all the details of her past, or did she keep you in the dark like she kept everyone else? She told me everything. Everything, including the investigation. There was no investigation. Jonas's voice was flat. You made that up. Those papers you're waving around, they're forgeries. Any fool can see that. And how would you know what Boston Hospital documents look like? I don't, but I know what desperation looks like. Jonas stepped forward, and something in his posture made Whitmore take a step back. You've been trying to destroy Clara since the day she got here. When she was dying and needed help, you turned her away. When she saved a child's life, you called her a disgrace. And now, when the town is starting to see you for what you really are, you're manufacturing lies to bring her down. These aren't lies. Then prove it. Jonas's voice rang out over the crowd. Send a telegram to Massachusetts General Hospital. Ask them about this investigation. Ask them to verify your documents. If you're telling the truth, you've got nothing to lose. Whitmore's face went pale. That would take weeks. In the meantime, we'll all remember that you refused to treat a dying woman because you didn't like where she came from. We'll remember that you insulted Margaret Mercer's memory in front of the whole town. We'll remember that you've done everything in your power to destroy a woman whose only crime was showing you up. I am a respected physician. You're a coward. Jonas's voice was quiet now, but it carried. You're a small, petty man who can't stand the idea that someone might be better than you. Clara Bennett has more courage in her damaged hands than you've got in your whole body, and everyone in this town is starting to see it. The crowd was murmuring again, but the tone had shifted. Clara saw Mr. Patterson nodding slowly. Martha Wells was glaring at Whitmore with open contempt. Even some of the men who'd been skeptical were looking uncertain. I'm calling for a town meeting, Jonas continued. Tomorrow night. Everyone's invited. Dr. Whitmore can present his evidence. Clara can present hers, and then we'll vote. Vote on what? On whether we believe you. On whether we trust a man who'd let a woman die rather than dirty his hands saving her. Jonas's eyes swept the crowd. On what kind of town we want Bitter Creek to be. Whitmore's face had gone from pale to purple. You can't just... Actually, he can. Mr. Patterson stepped forward. Town charter allows any citizen to call for a public meeting on matters of community concern. This certainly qualifies. I second the motion, Martha Wells called out. Third, Adelaide Wheeler added. One by one, voices joined in. Not everyone Clara could see the holdouts, the ones still loyal to Whitmore, or simply unwilling to take a side. But enough. More than enough. Whitmore looked around at the turning tide, and for just a moment Clara saw fear in his eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by cold fury. Very well, he said. A town meeting. Tomorrow night. We'll settle this once and for all. He climbed down from his crate and walked away, his back rigid with rage. Clara realized she was shaking. You all right? Jonas asked quietly. I don't know. She looked at him. What you just did was overdue. He squeezed her hand. I should have said all that weeks ago. Should have stood up for you from the start. You did stand up for me. You brought me home. You kept me alive. That was the easy part. Jonas's eyes were fierce. Tomorrow's going to be harder. Whitmore isn't going to give up without a fight. I know. You ready for that? Clara looked around at the crowd, the supporters, the skeptics, the undecided. She looked at her damaged hands, still wrapped in bandages. She thought about everything she'd lost and everything she'd found. I've been ready my whole life, she said. I just didn't know it until now. They walked home together through the cold afternoon, Sam meeting them at the door with worried eyes. Is it true? He asked, still speaking, still finding his voice each word a small miracle. What they're saying in town. What are they saying? That Dr. Whitmore wants to hurt Clara, that there's going to be a fight. Jonas knelt down so he was eye level with his son. There's going to be a meeting. People are going to talk, and then they're going to decide what they believe. That's all. But what if they believe him? What if they make Clara go away? They won't. Jonas's voice was certain. And even if they tried, I wouldn't let them. Clara's family now. Family doesn't leave. Sam looked at Clara, his eyes still holding traces of that old fear. Promise. Clara knelt down beside Jonas. I promise, Sam. Whatever happens tomorrow, I'm not going anywhere. You're stuck with me. Good. Sam hesitated, then threw his arms around both of them. I don't want you to leave. I want us to stay together. All of us. We will. Jonas said, his voice rough. We will, son. I promise. But even as he said it, Clara felt the weight of tomorrow pressing down on them. Whitmore wasn't finished. The fight wasn't over. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a cold voice whispered that promises made in kitchens didn't always survive the storms that followed. That night the wind picked up. Clara lay awake listening to it howl against the windows, rattling the shutters, and sending drafts through every crack in the walls. She'd been in Montana long enough now to recognize the sound. A blizzard was coming. She got up and went to the window, looking out at the darkness. The first flakes of snow were already falling small and hard and driven sideways by the wind. Can't sleep either. Jonas's voice came from the doorway. She turned to find him watching her, his face shadowed in the dim light. Storm's coming, she said. Big one from the feel of it. He moved to stand beside her. Might delay the town meeting. Or give Whitmore more time to plan. That too. Jonas was quiet for a moment. Clara, if things go badly tomorrow. They won't. But if they do, if Whitmore convinces enough people, Jonas. She turned to face him. Whatever happens, we face it together. That's what you said. That's what we promised Sam. I know, He broke off, running a hand through his hair. I keep thinking about what I'd do if I lost you. If they drove you out or worse. And I can't picture it. My mind won't go there. Then don't let it. Clara took his hands. We're going to get through tomorrow. We're going to stand in front of that town and tell them the truth. And when it's over, we're going to come home and start planning our wedding. You make it sound simple. It is simple. Not easy, but simple. She squeezed his hands. The truth is on our side, Jonas. That has to count for something. I hope so. He pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her. God, I hope so. They stood like that for a long time, watching the snow fall, holding on to each other against the storm that was coming. Neither of them knew just how big that storm would be. Morning brought chaos. The blizzard had hit hard overnight, piling snow against the doors and windows, blocking the roads to town. Jonas spent hours digging out the barn to check on the animals, while Clara helped Sam with breakfast. Will we still have the meeting? Sam asked. I don't know, sweetheart. The roads might be too bad. But what about Dr. Whitmore? What about what he said? That can wait. Right now we need to focus on staying warm and safe. But even as she said it, Clara felt the urgency pressing against her chest. Every day that passed gave Whitmore more time. More time to spread lies, to poison minds, to build his case against her. She couldn't let that happen. The answer came mid-morning in the form of a rider struggling through the snow. Jonas spotted him first. Someone's coming. They watched from the window as the figure approached, hunched against the wind. When he finally reached the porch, Clara recognized him, young Tommy Patterson, the shopkeeper's son. Jonas pulled open the door. Get in here, boy. What are you doing out in this? Tommy stumbled inside, snow caked on his coat and hat. Mr. Mercer, Miss Bennett, my pa sent me. He was gasping, trying to catch his breath. It's Mrs. Callahan, the one who lives out by Miller's Ridge. I know her. What's wrong? Baby's coming. But something's wrong. She's been laboring since yesterday, and the baby won't come. Pa tried to get to Doc Whitmore, but the doc says he won't go out in this storm. Says it's too dangerous. Clara felt ice form in her stomach. He won't go. No, ma'am. Says if Mrs. Callahan dies, it's God's will. Tommy's young face was tight with fear. But my pa says that's murder, letting a woman die when he could help. And he said maybe you could... Where does she live? Clara. Jonas caught her arm. You can't go out in this. The storm will kill you. The storm might kill me. Childbirth definitely will kill her if no one helps. Clara was already moving, gathering supplies. I was a nurse, Jonas. I've delivered babies before. I can help. Your hands. My hands are damaged, not useless. She turned to face him. I know this is dangerous. I know I might not make it back. But I can't sit here and let a woman die when I could save her. Then I'm coming with you. You can't. Someone needs to stay with Sam. Mrs. Holloway can stay with Sam. In this storm, she can barely make it from her house to ours on a good day. Jonas's face was a mask of anguish. Clara, please. I can't lose you. Not now. Not when we've just... You won't lose me. She gripped his hands. I survived 3 days in a wrecked stagecoach. I can survive a few hours in a blizzard. That's not... Jonas. She pulled him close, pressing her forehead to his. This is who I am. This is what I do. I save people. It's the only thing I've ever been good at, and I can't stop doing it just because it's dangerous. He was silent for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. I'll saddle Buck. He's the strongest. He'll get you through the drifts. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just come back. His voice cracked. Promise me you'll come back. I promise. She kissed him once hard and desperate, and then she was moving. The storm swallowed her whole. The wind tore at Clara like something alive. She couldn't see more than a few feet ahead. Buck struggled through drifts that reached his chest, and Clara clung to the saddle with hands that screamed in protest. The cold bit through her coat, her gloves, her skin settling into her bones like an old enemy come home. Tommy Patterson rode ahead somehow, keeping his bearings despite the whiteout conditions. The boy knew this land had grown up on it, and Clara trusted him to find the way, even when every direction looked the same. Not far now, Tommy shouted over the wind. Just past the ridge. Clara nodded, saving her breath. Every inhale felt like swallowing ice. She thought about Jonas and Sam safe at the ranch. She thought about the promise she'd made. She thought about Mrs. Callahan laboring alone in a cabin, while a doctor who'd sworn to heal refused to help. Some things were worth dying for. The Callahan cabin appeared through the snow like a ghost, solid and real, and impossibly welcome. Tommy helped Clara dismount, and they stumbled toward the door together. Inside, chaos. Mrs. Callahan lay on a bed in the corner, her face gray with exhaustion. Her husband, a big man with terrified eyes, paced the small room like a caged animal. 2 young children huddled by the fire, silent and scared. Thank God. Mr. Callahan grabbed Clara's arm. Thank God you came. She's been the baby, won't? I don't know what to do. I need hot water. Clara was already stripping off her coat, moving toward the bed. Clean cloth. A sharp knife boiled if possible. And I need everyone except Mr. Callahan to wait in the other room. But now. They moved. Clara's voice carried an authority she'd forgotten she possessed, the voice of a nurse who'd commanded chaos in field hospitals and city wards. She reached the bed and took Mrs. Callahan's hand. The woman's grip was weak, her eyes unfocused. Mrs. Callahan, Sarah, can you hear me? Who? My name is Clara Bennett. I'm a nurse. I'm here to help you. The doctor isn't coming. But I've delivered babies before. I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Something flickered in Sarah Callahan's eyes. Fear, yes, but also hope. Please, she whispered. Save my baby, even if I just save my baby. I'm going to save you both. Clara squeezed her hand. But I need you to fight with me. Can you do that? Sarah nodded weakly. Good. Now let me see what we're dealing with. The examination told Clara everything she needed to know and everything she feared. The baby was breech, coming feet first instead of head first, which meant a normal delivery was nearly impossible. In a hospital with proper equipment and other doctors, there were procedures. Here in a cabin in the middle of a blizzard, Clara had only her hands, her damaged, 7-fingered hands. Mr. Callahan. Clara kept her voice calm. I need you to hold your wife's shoulders. Keep her still no matter what happens. This is going to hurt. What are you going to do? I'm going to turn the baby. It's the only way. Can you? With your hands. I can. Clara met his eyes. I have to. She'd done this twice before, both times in the war. Both times with a doctor supervising, ready to intervene if something went wrong. Now she was alone, and the stakes couldn't be higher. Sarah? Clara leaned close. I'm going to reach inside and try to turn the baby. It's going to be the worst pain you've ever felt. I need you to breathe through it. Scream if you have to, but don't push until I tell you. Understand? Sarah's eyes were wide with fear, but she nodded. Good girl. Here we go. Clara worked by feel, her damaged fingers finding their way despite their limitations. The baby was stuck twisted in a position that would kill both mother and child if left alone. She had to turn. It had to guide it into the proper position, had to do the impossible with hands that weren't whole. Sarah screamed. Mr. Callahan held her down, tears streaming down his face. Clara kept working, kept feeling, kept adjusting. Her hands burned with pain, but she pushed through it. She'd pushed through worse. She'd survived worse. Almost there, she murmured. Almost, yes. Yes, there. She felt the baby shift, felt the tiny body turn. Head down now, the way it should be. Sarah, I need you to push. Now. As hard as you can. Sarah pushed. Once, twice, 3 times. And then impossibly beautifully, a baby's cry split the air. Clara caught the child in her hands, a girl perfect and pink, and screaming with the indignation of the newly born. She cleared the tiny mouth, wrapped the baby in clean cloth, and placed her in Sarah's arms. You did it. Clara was crying, she realized, tears streaming down her face. You did it, Sarah. She's perfect. Sarah looked at her daughter with an expression Clara would never forget. Wonder and love and fierce primal joy. Thank you, Sarah whispered. Thank you. Mr. Callahan was sobbing openly, his big hands shaking as he touched his daughter's face. I can't. How do we ever? You don't have to do anything. Clara stepped back, exhaustion hitting her like a wave. Just take care of your family. That's all I need. She made it to the chair by the fire, before her legs gave out. The storm raged for 2 more days. Clara stayed at the Callahan cabin, tending to Sarah and the baby, making sure there were no complications. She slept in fits and starts, her dreams full of snow and screaming, and the feel of a tiny body turning in her hands. On the 3rd morning, the wind finally died. Clara stepped outside to a world transformed. The snow had buried everything, creating a landscape of white that sparkled in the weak winter sun. Beautiful and deadly and achingly familiar. Miss Bennett. Tommy Patterson appeared at her elbow, looking anxious. The road should be clear enough to travel now. Pa will be worried. Let's go then. But before she could move, another figure emerged from the snow. Then another. Then a whole group struggling through the drifts toward the cabin. Jonas was in front. Clara ran. She ran through the snow, her legs churning, her lungs burning, her heart pounding. Jonas ran too, and they met somewhere in the middle, crashing together in an embrace that nearly knocked them both down. You're alive. His voice was ragged. Thank God. Thank God you're alive. I promised. She was crying again. I promised I'd come back. I know you did. But when the storm didn't stop, when I couldn't come for you... He pulled back to look at her face. Don't ever do that to me again. I can't promise that. You know I can't. I know. He kissed her hard and desperate. I know. I love you. I love you so much. I love you too. Behind Jonas, the rest of the group was approaching. Mr. Patterson, Martha Wells, 6 others from town, and Sam riding on Mrs. Holloway's horse, his face alight with relief. Clara. He slid down and ran toward her. Clara, you're okay. She caught him in a hug, lifting him off his feet. I'm okay, sweetheart. I'm right here. Papa said you might not come back. He said the storm might, but I knew. I knew you'd be okay. How did you know? Because you promised. Sam's voice was certain. And you always keep your promises. Clara looked at Jonas over his son's head. This was her family. This was what she'd been fighting for. This was worth everything. The town meeting happened 3 days later. The church was packed. Every seat was taken, and people lined the walls, crammed into every available space. Clara sat in the front row, flanked by Jonas and Sam, trying to project a calm she didn't feel. Dr. Pretty. Whitmore sat on the opposite side, his expression smug. He still had his evidence, his accusations, his poison. The storm had delayed the confrontation, but hadn't prevented it. Judge Morrison, the circuit judge who traveled through once a month, had agreed to preside. He was a fair man, everyone said, with no tolerance for nonsense. Clara hoped that was true. We're here to address accusations made against Clara Bennett, Judge Morrison began. Dr. Whitmore has alleged that Miss Bennett was investigated for patient deaths during her time in Boston. Miss Bennett denies these allegations. We're going to hear from both sides, and then this community will decide what they believe. If I may begin. Whitmore stood holding his sheaf of papers. I have here documents from Massachusetts General Hospital that clearly show. Before we examine any documents, Judge Morrison interrupted. I have a question. Dr. Whitmore, did you send a telegram to the hospital in Boston to verify these papers? Whitmore hesitated. I didn't see the need. The documents speak for themselves. Fortunately, someone else did see the need. The judge held up a telegram. This arrived yesterday, forwarded from the telegraph office in Buffalo Creek. It's a response from the administrator of Massachusetts General Hospital. Clara's heart stopped. The telegram states, and I quote, "No investigation of Clara Bennett was ever conducted. Miss Bennett was dismissed for violation of hospital policy regarding patient treatment protocols. Specifically, she treated a patient against direct orders from her supervising physician. No accusations of patient harm were ever made. Any documents claiming otherwise are fraudulent." Murmurs swept through the crowd. Dr. Whitmore? Judge Morrison's voice was hard. Would you like to explain how you came to possess fraudulent documents? Whitmore's face had gone pale. Those documents were sent to me by a colleague. I had no way of knowing. You had every way of knowing. You could have verified them before making public accusations against a woman's character. The judge turned to the crowd. Let me be clear about what's happened here. Dr. Whitmore has publicly accused Clara Bennett of murder based on forged documents. That's not a difference of opinion. That's slander. Now wait just a minute. I'm not finished. Judge Morrison stood. There's another matter to address. 3 days ago, Sarah Callahan went into labor during the worst blizzard this territory has seen in 20 years. Her husband rode to town for help. Dr. Whitmore refused to go. The storm was too dangerous. Clara Bennett went. The judge's voice rose. A woman with damaged hands who'd been in this territory for barely 2 months rode through that blizzard because a stranger needed help. She delivered a breech baby with nothing but her own skill and determination. Mother and child are both healthy. The crowd erupted. People were shouting, some in support of Clara, others demanding Whitmore answer for his actions. Judge Morrison raised his hand for silence. Dr. Whitmore, you've shown this community who you are. You turned away a dying woman because you didn't approve of her past. You spread lies to destroy her reputation, and you refused to help a mother in childbirth because it was inconvenient. He shook his head. I'm not in a position to revoke your license. That's beyond my authority. But I can tell you this, if I ever hear of you practicing medicine in this territory again, I'll find a way to make sure it's the last time. Whitmore's face went from pale to purple. You can't. This is outrageous. I've been a respected physician for 30 years. You've been a coward, hiding behind a medical degree. Martha Wells stood up, her voice ringing through the church. My mother died last winter. You said there was nothing to be done, but Clara Bennett looked at those same symptoms and told me exactly what was wrong, an abscess that could have been treated if caught earlier. My son had a fever for 3 days. Another voice from the back. You told me to let it run its course. Clara gave me willow bark tea and told me how to bring it down. He recovered in 2 days. She set my daughter's broken arm. She helped my wife through her monthly pains. She stitched up my hand when I cut it on the plow. One by one people stood. Story after story of Clara helping, healing, caring for people who needed it. Not for money, not for recognition. Just because it was the right thing to do. Clara sat in stunned silence, tears streaming down her face. She'd thought she was alone. She'd thought the scandal had followed her, that she'd never escape the shadow of what happened in Boston. But these people, these strangers who'd become neighbors, who'd become friends, they saw her. The real her. Not the disgrace, not the scandal. Just Clara trying her best to help. "I think we've heard enough." Judge Morrison's voice cut through the testimonies. "Clara Bennett, please stand." Clara stood, her legs shaking. "You came to this territory under difficult circumstances. You've faced accusations, slander, and hostility. But you've also shown this community what courage looks like." The judge smiled slightly. "I don't know what happened in Boston, and frankly, I don't care. What I know is, what I've seen here, a woman who rides through blizzards to deliver babies, who treats the sick with compassion, who puts others before herself, even when it costs her." He turned to the crowd. "Does anyone here object to Clara Bennett remaining in Bitter Creek as a full member of this community?" Silence. "Does anyone object to her marriage to Jonas Mercer?" More silence, and then from somewhere in the back, someone started clapping. It spread like wildfire. Within seconds, the whole church was applauding, cheering, stamping their feet. Clara looked around in wonder at faces she was only beginning to know, faces that were smiling, welcoming, accepting. Jonas took her hand. Sam pressed against her other side. Home, Clara thought. This is what home feels like. Whitmore left town that night. Nobody saw him go. He simply packed his bags, loaded his buggy, and disappeared into the darkness. By morning, his office was empty. His house, locked up, his presence in Bitter Creek, erased like a bad dream. "Good riddance," Mrs. Holloway said when she heard the news. "That man was a boil on this town's backside for too long." "What will people do for a doctor?" Clara asked. "They'll do what they've been doing for weeks now, come to you." The widow smiled. "Don't look so surprised. You're the closest thing to a real healer this town has had in years." "I'm not a doctor. I don't have a license. Neither did my grandmother, and she delivered every baby in her county for 40 years. Mrs. Holloway patted Clara's hand. "Out here, we don't much care about licenses. We care about results, and your results speak for themselves." The wedding happened 2 weeks later. It was a small affair, just family and close friends gathered in the Mercer front room. Judge Morrison performed the ceremony, and Mrs. Holloway cried the whole way through. Sam stood beside his father as best man, and when Jonas slipped the simple gold band onto Clara's finger, the boy's smile was brighter than the winter sun. "Do you, Clara Bennett, take this man to be your husband?" "I do." The words felt like coming home. "And do you, Jonas Mercer, take this woman to be your wife?" "I do." Jonas's voice was rough with emotion. "God, I do." "Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife." Judge Morrison grinned. "Kiss her already, Mercer. You've been waiting long enough." Jonas kissed her, and the room erupted in cheers. Later, after the guest had gone and Sam had been put to bed, Clara and Jonas sat together by the fire. Husband and wife, a family. "I can't believe it's real," Clara said softly. "A few months ago, I was alone, disgraced, dying in a snowbank, and now you're stuck with me." Jonas pulled her close. "For better or worse." "Mostly better, I think." "Let's hope so." He kissed her forehead. "Clara, I need to tell you something." "That sounds serious." "It is." He pulled back to look at her face. "I've been thinking about what you said about being a healer, about helping people. And I think you should do it, officially. We could turn the old barn into a clinic, nothing fancy, just a place where people can come when they need help. I've got some money saved, and with what the ranch brings in, Jonas." Clara's heart was so full she could barely speak. You'd do that for me? I'd do anything for you. Don't you know that by now? He took her damaged hands in his. These hands saved lives, Clara. They saved my son. They saved our neighbor's baby. They saved me in every way that matters. He kissed her knuckles gently. I want to help you keep saving people. For as long as we live. Clara couldn't speak. She just pulled him close and held on, overwhelmed by a love she'd never expected to find. Spring came slowly to Montana. The snow melted in patches, revealing brown earth and hardy green shoots pushing toward the sun. The creek beside the ranch began to flow again, and birds returned to the trees, filling the air with songs that had been absent all winter. Clara stood on the porch of her new clinic, the barn converted just as Jonas had promised, and watched Sam running through the yard. He was talking now, not constantly, not easily, but regularly. Words came when he needed them, and silence came when he didn't, and somehow that balance felt right for a boy who'd lost so much and found so much again. Mama. He stopped at the porch steps, breathless. Mama, come look. The baby bird's hatched. Mama. He'd started calling her that 3 weeks ago, hesitantly at first, then with growing confidence. Each time he said it, Clara's heart cracked open a little more. Show me, she said, taking his hand. They walked together to the tree where Sam had been watching a nest all spring. Inside, 4 tiny birds chirped desperately, their mouths open wide. They're hungry, Sam said seriously. Their mama will come feed them soon. She always does. She does, Clara agreed. That's what mothers do. Sam looked up at her with those old soul eyes. You always came when I needed you, even when you didn't have to. That's what family does, Sam. We show up for each other. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. He nodded slowly, processing this in his careful way. Then, I'm glad you came here. I'm glad the stagecoach crashed. Sam. Not the bad parts. Not that people died. But... He struggled for words. If the coach hadn't crashed, you would have gone to town, and Dr. Whitmore would have been mean to you, and maybe you would have left. Maybe, Clara admitted. But instead, Papa found you, and you stayed. And now, you're my mama. Sam squeezed her hand. Sometimes bad things make good things possible. Is that wrong to say? Clara knelt down so she was eye level with him. No, sweetheart. That's not wrong at all. That's wisdom. What's wisdom? Understanding that life is complicated, that sadness and happiness can exist together, that we can grieve what we've lost while still being grateful for what we've found. Sam thought about this. I still miss my first mama, but I love you too. Is that okay? That's more than okay. Clara pulled him into a hug. Your first mama will always be part of you. Loving me doesn't change that. It just means your heart grew bigger. Hearts can grow. Hearts can do all sorts of things we don't expect. Trust me. Jonas found them like that, wrapped in each other's arms beneath the tree with the baby birds. He stood watching for a moment, his face full of an emotion too big for words. Room for one more? He asked. Sam waved him over. Papa, did you know hearts can grow? I did know that. Jonas joined the embrace, his arms wrapping around both of them. Mine's been growing since the day I found your mama in the snow. Our family grew too, Sam said. First it was just you and me, then Clara came, and now... He stopped, his eyes going wide. Papa, is Clara going to have a baby? Clara felt her face heat. She hadn't told anyone yet, hadn't been sure enough to say the words out loud. But Sam was looking at her with those knowing eyes, and she couldn't lie to him. Maybe, she said carefully. We'll have to wait and see. Jonas went still. Clara. I wasn't going to say anything until I was certain. But... She took a breath. I think so. I think maybe I am. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Jonas let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob, and swept her up in his arms. A baby, he breathed. We're having a baby. We might be having a baby. I could be wrong. You're not wrong. He kissed her long and deep. You're never wrong about things like this. Sam was bouncing on his feet. A baby. A real baby. Can it be a brother? I want a brother, or a sister. I don't care. I just want a baby. We don't get to choose, sweetheart. Clara laughed through tears. But whatever we get, I promise you'll be the best big brother in all of Montana. In all the world, Sam corrected seriously. I'm going to be the best big brother in all the world. Summer arrived in full force, turning the valley green and gold. Clara's clinic saw a steady stream of patients, ranch hands with injuries, mothers with sick children, old folks with aches and pains. She treated them all, charging what people could afford, which was sometimes nothing at all. You're going to bankrupt us, Jonas teased one evening. We'll manage. Clara rubbed her growing belly. We always do. That we do. He pulled her close. I love you, Clara Mercer. I love you too, Jonas Mercer. From his room, Sam's voice drifted down. I love both of you. Now stop being mushy and come tell me a story. They laughed, the sound filling the house with warmth. This was life, Clara thought. Not the dramatic moments, the rescues and confrontations and declarations of love, but this, the ordinary evenings, the gentle teasing, the child calling for a bedtime story, the husband's arm around her waist, the baby growing inside her. She'd come to Montana looking for purpose. She'd found so much more. She'd found home. The baby came in October during the first snowfall of the season. A boy, perfect and healthy and screaming loud enough to be heard in town. They named him Thomas, after the child Clara had saved on the stagecoach. It felt right somehow, a reminder of where this all began. He's beautiful, Jonas whispered, looking at his new son with wonder. Just like his mother. He has your eyes. Poor kid. Clara laughed weakly. The birth had been hard, but she'd survived it. She'd survived everything this land had thrown at her, and she'd keep surviving. That was what she did. That was who she was. Sam crept into the room, his eyes huge as he looked at his baby brother. He's so small. You were that small once. I don't remember. Nobody does. Clara held out her arm, and Sam crawled onto the bed beside her. But your father remembers. He remembers holding you for the first time, how scared he was, how much he loved you. Do you love Thomas that much? I love Thomas exactly that much, and I love you exactly that much too. She kissed Sam's forehead. Love doesn't divide, Sam. It multiplies. The more people you love, the more love you have. Sam considered this, then nodded. I'm going to teach him everything. How to ride, how to draw, how to fish. Everything. He's lucky to have you. We're lucky to have each other. Sam looked at Clara with those old soul eyes. That's what you always say. That family is about choosing each other. And it is. Every single day we choose each other. That's what makes us a family. Jonas leaned down and kissed both of them. Clara, then Sam, then the baby's tiny forehead. My family, he said softly. My whole world right here in this room. Your whole world, Clara agreed. Outside, the snow continued to fall soft and quiet and clean. But inside the Mercer house, there was warmth. There was love. There was the sound of a baby's breathing, a boy's questions, a man's quiet contentment. Clara Bennett had come to Montana, broken and dying, a woman with nothing left to lose. Clara Mercer lay in her bed, surrounded by her family, a woman with everything. The storm had tried to kill her. Instead, it had brought her home. And home, she had learned, was not a place. It was the people who chose you, who fought for you, who loved you through the hardest moments, and celebrated with you through the best ones. Home was Jonas and Sam and baby Thomas. Home was this ranch, this valley, this community that had opened its arms to a stranger. Home was the life she'd built, with her own damaged hands, one choice at a time. The mail-order bride had arrived broken, but she had risen whole, and she had found her place in a world that finally felt like it was exactly where she belonged.